Om Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So continuing with the discussion on Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita by Srila Goswami, Volume 1, Chapter 34th. Prabhupada is in Russia and he's going to meet this Professor Kotowski. When Prabhupada arrived, the middle-aged Russian professor dressed in a grey suit got up from his cluttered desk and welcomed Prabhupada into a small office. Professor Kotowski appeared a bit hesitant, however, more cautious than in his letters. When Shyamsundar mentioned Prabhupada's eagerness to lecture before interested scholars at the academy, Professor Kotowski flatly refused. It would never be allowed. Prabhupada was disappointed. The next moment, however, Prabhupada seemed unaffected and began speaking in his humble, genteel manner, sitting in a straight-backed office chair beside Professor Kotowski, who sat at his desk. Shyamsundar turned on the tape recorder, which the professor eyed cautiously but didn't object to. Prabhupada. The other day, I was reading in the paper, Moscow News. There was a communist congress, and the president declared that we are ready to get others' experiences to improve. So I think the Vedic concept of socialism or communism will much improve the idea of communism. Professor Kotowski listened intently and politely as his foreign visitor explained how the Grihastha in Vedic culture provides for everyone living in his house, even for the lizards, and how before taking his meal he calls in the road to invite any hungry person to come and eat. In this way, Prabhupada explained, there are so many good concepts about the socialist ideas of communism. So I thought that these ideas might have been distributed to some of your thoughtful men. Therefore, I was anxious to speak. Professor Kotowski's academic interest was piqued. You know it is interesting, he said. His articulate English heavily accented. As it is here in our country, there is now great interest in the history of old thought. He described the accomplishments of his colleagues and himself, particularly a booklet they had recently prepared highlighting Soviet studies in Indology. He said he would like to give a copy to Prabhupada. Professor Kotowski, you will be interested to discover that we published not all, but some Puranas, then some parts of the Ramayana, 80 volumes in Russian of the Mahabharata, and also a second edition of the Mahabharata, translated by different people in full and published. Manusmriti is also translated in full and published with Sanskrit commentaries, and such was the great interest that all of these publications were sold in a week. They are now completely out of stock. It is impossible to get them in the book market after a month. Such a great interest among reading people here in Moscow and USSR towards ancient Vedic culture. Among these Puranas, the Srimad Bhagavatam is called the Mahapurana, and he told of his own translation of Srimad Bhagavatam, the ripened fruit of the Vedic desire tree. He would show some volumes to the professor if he was interested. Professor Kotowski said the Moscow and Leningrad libraries had nearly all the major texts of Indian culture in Sanskrit. These libraries are housed not only ancient texts, but more recent literature as well, comprising an up-to-date study of Hinduism. Hinduism, Prabhupada interrupted, is a very complex topic. And they both laughed. Professor Kotowski acknowledged that Hinduism was more than a religion. It was a way of life. But Prabhupada explained that the same Hindu was actually a misnomer. The real term to explain Vedic culture was Varnashram. Briefly, Prabhupada described the four orders, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. Professor Kotowski, you're told that in any society there are four divisions, but it's not so easy to distinguish. For instance, one can group together different social classes and professional groups into four divisions in any society. There is no difficulty. The only difficulty is, for instance, in socialist society, in our country and other socialist societies, how can you distinguish productive group and workers? Prabhupada welcomed the professor's questions, although grounded in Soviet socialist vested interests. Prabhupada considered the professor not so much an academician as a pawn of the Soviet university system, much as one political power tries to understand its adversary. The professor was inquiring into Indian culture so that his government might penetrate it with their own ideology. Behind Professor Kotowski's apparent interest in Vedic culture, Prabhupada could see the view of the Communist Party, a view diametrically opposed to Vedic philosophy. See, Prabhupada could see all this. And although Professor Kotowski is just asking a simple question for laymen like us. Prabhupada could see as his questions are going in a different, coming from a different angle. Nevertheless, Prabhupada tactfully continued to present Krishna consciousness in accord with parampara, and he tried to convince Professor Kotowski through scripture and logic. Quoting Bhagavad Gita, a shastra with which the professor was familiar in his own way, Prabhupada described Lord Krishna as a creator of the four divisions of society. Professor Kotowski immediately concerned with the theory of the Soviet scholars that the Varnashram divisions were a recent addition to Vedic culture. He also again registered his opinion that the divisions of Varnashram had no meaning within socialism. Professor Kotowski, there is a great distinction between socialist society and all societies preceding socialism. Because in modern Western society, you can group all social and professional classes in the particular class divisions, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or factory owners, and Shudras, or menial workers. But here we have no Vaishyas, because we have administrative staff in factories, managerial staff. You can call them Kshatriyas. And then Shudras, the workers themselves, but not this intermediate class. Prabhupada. That is stated, Kalo Shudra Sambhava. In this age, practically all men are Shudras. That is stated. But if there are simply Shudras, then the social order will be disturbed. In spite of a state of Shudras, the Brahmins are there. That is necessary. So if you do not divide the social order in such a way, then there will be chaos. That is the scientific estimation of the Vedas. You may belong to the Shudra class, but to maintain the social order, you have to train some of the Shudras to become Brahmins. It cannot depend on the Shudras. Now again, Shudras doesn't mean the caste system, the lower class. Shudras means the Varnashram system, lower class, which means those who serve others, the other three classes. And Shudras are not, like they show in the movies, untouchables. They're not untouchables. Or how the caste system has penetrated into the society now. Or earlier it was even worse. So Shudras mean those who serve the upper classes. Shudra means at home if somebody is cooking or cleaning and or taking care of other needs at home for Brahmins or for Kshatriyas or for Vaishyas. So if they are at home, like washing their dishes, washing clothes, and massaging the master, so how can they be untouchables? They're touching the master. They're touching everything in the house. So how can they be untouchables? So this perverted form of caste system, caste system is also a perverted form of varnashram, has done so much bad to the society. And it's part of it is still there, especially in villages. When I see, and not the untouchability part, but like social divisions or social discrimination, it is still there. And I don't know how can it be eliminated. And that way, American system or Western system, some things are good in that system. They don't believe in all this. You work hard, you make money, and that's it. You're good. Besides the meat eating and other propensities which are bad. But over there, the whole importance is on working hard. And everybody has opportunities to make money, to be successful, to the education. They have opportunity to get good education, good degree. But here somehow It's not so. Prabhupada gave his standard analogy, comparing the social body to the human body. All the parts are necessary, not only the legs, but the belly, arms, and the head. Otherwise, he said, it will not work properly. As long as this is going on, there will be some disturbance. Modern society's missing point, Prabhupada said, was an understanding of the purpose of human life. They do not know what is next life. He said, there is no department of knowledge or scientific department to study what is there after finishing this body. Professor Potosky objected politely, completely. Swamiji, he said, when the body dies, the owner also dies. Yeah, this Prabhupada quoted Professor Potosky many times in his lectures afterwards, after his Russian trip. He said, there's a great professor, Professor Potosky. He says, when the body dies, everything is finished. No, the soul, na anyate hanyamane sharire. The soul carries on, continues, but people don't know. No, Prabhupada quickly replied, this fact you must know. Why is there is no department of knowledge in the university to study this fact scientifically? That is my proposition. That department is lacking. It may be as you say, it may be as I say, but there must be a department of knowledge. Now, recently, a cardiologist, a doctor in Montreal and Toronto, has accepted that there is a soul. I had some correspondence with him. He strongly believes that there is a soul. Prabhupada continued to build his argument. We accept knowledge from authority. The professor continued that everything had to be accepted on the basis of empirical evidence. But then in the mid-sentence, he stopped arguing and inquired, have you many branches of a society in the world? Prabhupada began speaking about ISKCON with its 65 branches all over the world and of how he was going next to Paris, where his disciples had recently acquired a new center, and of how the American boys and girls especially were joining this movement. He told of the 4 prohibitive rules: no meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, and no gambling, and of the books he had published. As Prabhupada described the workings of his movement, Professor Kotowski nodded approvingly. When Prabhupada returned to comparing Krishna consciousness to communism, he concluded that the two philosophies were in agreement and both stressed surrender to an authority. The devotee surrenders to Krishna, the communist to Lenin. Prabhupada. Our life is by surrender. Is it not? Do you agree with this point, Professor? To some extent you surrender. Prabhupada. Yes, to the full extent. Katowski. You have to surrender to the society, for instance, the whole people. Prabhupada. Yes, to the whole people or to the state or king or government, whatever you say, the surrender must be there. It may be different. Kotowski. The only difficulty is that we cannot have surrender to government or to a king. The principal difference is of surrender to a king who is a single person or to the whole society. Prabhupada. No, that's a change of color only, but the surrender is there. The principle of surrender is there. Whether you surrender to monarchy, democracy, aristocracy, or dictatorship, you have to surrender. That's a fact. Without surrender, there is no life. It is not possible. So we are educating persons to surrender to the Supreme, wherefrom you get all protection. Just like Krishna says, Sarva Dharman Parityaja. So surrender is there. No one can say, no, I'm not surrendered to anyone. The difference is where he surrenders. And the ultimate surrendering object is Krishna. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanvan Ma Prapadyate. After surrendering to so many things, birth after birth, when one is factually wise, he surrenders unto me. Professor Katowski agreed, but surrender had to be accompanied by revolution, he said. The French Revolution, for example, was a revolt against one kind of surrender. Yet the revolution itself was another surrender, surrender to the people. So it is not enough to come full stop. The professor argued, surrender is to be accompanied with revolt against surrender to other people. See, so many revolutions have happened in the past because not just the principle or the philosophy, is because of corruption of the head of the states. Whoever the head of them, whether it's a king or the government itself or whoever, it's a corruption. The The leader, if he's not in a mood to serve, to take care of its population, population will revolt one time or the other. That is why this Vedic knowledge or the application of Vedic knowledge for everybody, Brahman, Vaishya, Shudra, Kshatriya, it's very important. Yudhishthira Maharaj was ideal king, of course, Lord Ram also, and so many others. But Yudhishthira Maharaj, recently, ideal king. To put him on the throne, Krishna orchestrated this whole battle of Mahabharata, just to put Yudhishthira Maharaj on the throne. So many people were killed in this battle. And Yudhishthira Maharaj, such a king, people don't understand his position, and that's why, oh, he was a gambler and he put his wife on. No, no, no. Yudhishthira Maharaj was such a pious person, such a uh, dharma abiding, scripture abiding person, that even sin, he had never thought of committing a sin. Forget about committing a sin. He never thought of it. And in his kingdom, not too long ago, 5,000 years ago only, nobody died untimely. Untimely means there's no such thing as father was living and then son was dying. Didn't happen in his kingdom. I mean, the seasons of producing proper varieties of food, fruits, without any problems. No natural disturbances. Why? Because the leader was perfect. And as soon as he heard that Krishna has left, he immediately left the kingdom. He was not attached to the kingdom. And then Parikshit Maharaj was put on the throne. So if these kind of leaders are there, where is the question of revolution? Where is the question of change of government? Like in democracy, every 5 years you change the government. They're like in Arab countries or in Saudi Arabia, um, there is no democracy, it's a aristocracy. The king is there. So they were saying, they were just joking with Indian counterparts that, oh, our system is better than yours, than democracy, where every 5 years you elect a new leader and this and that. Then somebody asks, well, how come your system is better? You have no choice who is leading you, and you just have to work under him. He said, at least we have one ruler, and even if he is corrupt, how much he's gonna eat? How much he's gonna accumulate? But in your case, you have corrupt leaders, rulers every 5 years. So they just come, accumulate, and go away, and then the new person will come, accumulate, and go away. In our case, there is only one. How much is going to accumulate? So our system is better. But anyway, the problem is of corruption, problem is of exploitation, problem is of not following the scriptures. And that's where the revolutions happen. And so many revolutions have happened. They just come and kill the king and then put a new government, and then that king becomes corrupt, maybe that or some other his descendants, and then again revolution. It doesn't end. Prabhupada, yes, the surrender will be full stop when it is surrender to Krishna. That is full stop. No more surrender. Other surrender you have to change by revolution. But when you come to Krishna, that is sufficient. You're satisfied. Just like I give you one example. A child is crying and people change laps. Oh, it has not stopped. But as soon as the baby comes to the lap of his mother, Petowski, it stops. Yes. full satisfaction. So this surrender, the changes will go on in different categories. The sum total of all these surrenders is surrender to Maya, material illusion. But the final surrender is to Krishna. Then you'll be happy. After only 3 days, Prabhupada's mission in Moscow seemed finished. The meeting with Professor Kotowski over, what was left? The government would allow nothing else. It had not allowed him to bring in books. And now he had been refused the opportunity to speak publicly. Foreigners were not to talk with the Russians. He could go nowhere unless on an accompanied tout. So with no preaching and no prospects, he stayed in his cramped room, taking his massage, bathing, accepting whatever food Shamsundar would gather and cook, dictating a few letters, chanting Hare Krishna and translating Shivan. Prabhupada took a guided tour of Moscow, riding with other tourists on a crowded bus. He saw elderly Russians going to church, armed guards stationed at the door. He soon tired of the tour. However, and the tour guide got him a taxi and instructed the driver to return him to the Hotel National. So strict. Everything was so strict, crowd. I mean, they were so cautious of anybody coming and bringing their philosophy. Of course, devotees in Russia have suffered a lot because there was so much of KGB was after them, police was after them, because of this new philosophy coming in, and the devotees were following it fanatically, and they were dead against it. In fact, one of the KGB reports was, we are only afraid of three things. CIA, that is definitely because America is involved. Second is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola, it represents capitalism. And Russians were really crazy after Coca-Cola. And it would be sold in the black market in Russia. And third, they said, was Hare Krishna. three institutes or societies, or three principles. They were really scared. But ultimately, they tortured devotees. There is a book, The Salted Bread, by one of the pioneer devotees in Russia. You'll see how much devotees have gone through to establish the movement in Russia. How much torture they went through. We don't go through anything in India, actually. India is such a safe place. Russia was terrible. And of course, they suffered a lot in other communist countries like East Germany or other places, but Russia was most terrible. And now there's so many devotees in Russia. But few years means about 15 years back, I heard in Moscow only there were 50,000 devotees chanting 16 rounds every day. And obviously more chanting less number of rounds, but 16 rounds, about 50,000 devotees. So that's a great point. I guess we can stop and see anybody has questions or comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, the untouchability part, right? This is really a black spot in India. I think still if we go in the rural areas, you see the real picture. I saw a video from Tamil Nadu. There is some village there where, the SC people, when they come inside the village, right, they have to, if they are in a bicycle, they have to get down, take their sleepers in their hands, and then they pass on those, from the houses of those, what we call the higher class people. And this is what I've seen in that video, right? So, really very ashamed of what is still going on. Untouchability part, it should be removed. But how it will be removed, nobody knows. How long it's going to take. There is no law against it. There should be a very strict law. And if something happens, then the people should be punished who are doing this. But on the other side, if you see, like you mentioned in US, it's all about you work and you live the way your life, right? But there is a problem going on in US as well from a long time in black and white. It's not today's case. There are a lot of movies also there. 12 Years as a Slave. If you see those movies, how the slavery part was there in US. It was like for so long, you know.
Slavery was there
Yeah,
until Abraham Lincoln abolished it in the war. There was a revolution there. Again, Revolutionary War was there in America, and he abolished it. There's no more slavery. But
slavery.
obviously, the leader has to be there. Now, I mean, President Barack Obama, he was black and he became the president of the US.
But probably the police issues were already there, right? Everybody has seen that.
See,
Killing
it's
black people.
it's not in the society, but some people, yes, still have some mentality that has to be corrected. There are laws against it in US. Um, to some people, you cannot just change them. But in India, this caste system is so ridiculous, actually.
Yeah.
But it is
Agree.
there in rural areas. It is there, and why it cannot be removed? Because of politics, votes. It's all the vote bank issue.
Yeah. I believe
So
probably some is still okay. I mean, not going to deeper into caste system, but what is given in the Vedas, the Varnashram system is still okay. That you do this part, because everybody, if they start doing everything, then it jeopardizes the entire thing. Nobody will be skillful in one particular thing. So it's still okay, but I think on the other hand, it's very vulnerable also. This Varnashram, because as you mentioned, right? So
yeah, but
people
Varnashram system was not dependent on birth.
exactly.
If you're born in a family of, say, Shudra, it doesn't mean you don't become a Shudra. It depends on your
Mm.
qualities, the karma, and the work you do. But who's going to look into that? That's where the Gurukul system was there. Proper gurus are there. They would judge what is this propensity of this boy. There's a Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra.
Yeah.
Then they would train him accordingly.
And probably nicely you mentioned this, that where is the untouchability? If that person, if Shudra is doing everything, if they are making, mm, so many things and which you are using on a daily basis, utensils
Yeah,
or some other things, they are working everywhere, right? So where is that untouchability? It's just there in the mind that you should not be.
that's all it is. That's all it is.
Hmm. So that's where their anger comes probably, because I've seen it right in the rural areas in Uttar Pradesh also. I've seen in my village itself, outside of that village, they get a place. It's on the southern side, and it's like a protocol in all the villages. The southern side, they'll get a place, and it's outside of the village. The Shudras will get a place to stay. And then on the other side, you see, they come inside, they work for us, they work in the farm, they work in, do everything, every activity. But just that they get so very bad mentality they have.
It's the wrong mentality. Very
Yeah,
wrong.
wrong.
And then it's bad karma for a person who's doing it.
Yeah.
So next life he has to suffer. He definitely has to suffer. What's the point? Oh, well, what to do except preach, 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 preach.
Yeah.
Okay, chalo, we'll stop here. Thank you all very much. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna,
Hare
Jai
Krishna.
Srila
Jai
Prabhupada.
Srila